Hi, welcome to part 3 of the second set of PowerPoint lectures on muscle. Now I'm going to introduce the concept of a motor unit, and this is a fabulous picture of a neuron here, and it's branching out, and this one is branching out and forming neuromuscular junction here, and then another branch onto a second muscle, and the third branch onto a third muscle. So this is how neurons work. They are able to branch out, and one particular neuron here is stimulating 3 muscle cells. So the definition for a motor unit is a single neuron and all the connected muscle cells that are stimulated by that neuron. So as I go on, I branch out, so there's 1 cell, 2 cell, 3 cells. So the group of cells plus the neuron, all that together, you're going to call it a motor unit. Now this is a very simple one. It's 3, but mostly it goes up to 1,000. So you could have 1,000 different muscle cells that are receiving a signal, or receiving an action potential from one neuron. And that neuron is branching out and reaching out to every single one of these muscles in order to send them a message to contract. Okay, so if we had a separate neuron that was coming, make this a neuron coming over to this one, and maybe then branching out to another one over here, this would be a second motor unit. That's the terminology. Now, a muscle, a complete muscle of yours, a biceps, let's say, will have many motor units that are acting upon it. So in this picture here, this is showing the spine, and you have one motor unit that's coming in purple, and one that's coming in blue, and one that's in red. And so they are, this particular neuron, branching to particular cells. And we have these all sort of intertwined, these different motor units. Why do you think? So the question there is, do we always need to contract all of these muscle cells at the same time when we're lifting a pen or when we're lifting your desk? So the way that we can moderate force, we talked about in the last video, we talked about summation, but there's yet another way that you can moderate force. And that has to do with how many of these cells you want to engage in the contraction. So if you only want to engage a few cells, you could just stimulate motor unit number 1. If you wanted to engage more cells, then you would engage motor unit number 1 again, plus 2. And then if you want contractions even stronger, you would then do 1, 2, and 3 and make that a stronger contraction. So what you're doing is recruiting more muscle cells. I'm telling you here, the size of the motor unit determines control. So some motor units are for fine motor control, and they will branch out maybe to 10, 13, 15 muscle fibers. That little one I showed you earlier. Your eye muscles are like that. You have very fine motor control of where you put your eyes, of where you look. And they can do it very quickly. A larger motor unit is going to produce a much more powerful contraction. So your gastrocnemius, you'll be able to jump up and down with your gastroc. And there, one neuron is going to branch out to 1,000 muscle cells, but you don't have that dexterity that your eyes do of very subtly looking up or subtly looking to the left. You can't do that with a gastroc. They all contract and you're going to jump. It's sort of gross motor. So this is what we were talking about earlier, the term recruitment for increasing force. So it depends whether you're lifting a feather or lifting a ton of bricks, right? What it is that you're going to change now when you decide that you need to create more force. As I said, we've already talked about summation, which is increasing the velocity at which those action potentials come. You can create more force. Recruitment then is going to result in an increase in tension as the whole muscle, of the whole muscle, as it recruits a greater number of motor units. So back to that example, I'm going to go back. Here, if we recruited one motor unit, only the red muscles are firing. Blue, only the blue ones are firing. And so we added more and more force, or more and more cells to create more force. The tension of individual fibers, right, added together are going to create more force. All of a sudden, I have more fibers that are contracting, and you're going to be able to create more tension in that muscle. So we can say, as a summary, that the control of tension, when you're trying to decide, okay, this is just a pen, I need to lift it, I don't need a whole lot of force, or this is my desk, you're going to be controlling both those things. You're going to be controlling summation. In other words, the frequency at which you're sending those motor signals from your brain to your arm. And you're also going to be performing recruitment, which is resulting by the increased magnitude. In other words, how many of these motor units I'm going to recruit. So you are doing that daily. You are deciding as you walk around and you see a book on the table and you want to pick it up, you're going to decide, along with your brain, how many motor units you need to engage in order to lift that book. And how is it that you know? You don't. You don't go around saying, oh, 8 motor units, oh, 12 motor units. You don't. You just guess. And sometimes you guess wrong. So let me tell you about guessing wrong before I show you the tiring. An example of guessing wrong is when you go grab a box. Let's say UPS delivered a box to you, left it on your porch, and you think it's some very heavy things that you ordered. It's a tire that you ordered, and it's very heavy. You go pick it up, and it actually wasn't. It was very light. It was some masks that you ordered. They came in a big box. And so you go lift it up thinking that you need a lot of motor units, and you lift it up way into the air because you mistakenly thought it was heavy when it wasn't. And vice versa. You think that something is very light, and you go pick it up and you don't use enough motor units, then you just stay stuck because you did not allocate enough strength to that task, and so you can't lift the box until you kind of rethink it and then put more force into it. That's an example of guessing on your recruitment. Do motor units tire? So motor units in the same muscle fire asynchronously during whole muscle contraction. It's kind of like a tug of war. When one motor unit is contracting, maybe another one rests and then another one pulls. It's the tug of war. For me is a good analogy, because if one person were to stop on this end, this is always jumping around, I apologize. If one person were to stop on this end and one person were to stop on this end, it's not going to make a whole lot of difference. It's not going to change. It's not going to change. So motor units one will rest while the other's still going, and then the other is going while the other rests, and it maintains tension. That's kind of how it does it, until eventually it'll tire for all those reasons that muscle tire that I told you earlier. So to summarize, if you lift a feather, you're going to stimulate these low threshold neurons, controlling fatigue-resistant slow twitch fibers. What's that mean? Well, we have slow twitch. These slow twitch fibers are the ones, think of those as postural muscles, the ones that allow you to stand up for long periods of time without just falling because you were so tired, right? These are low threshold neurons are going to stimulate this. So they fire at a very low threshold. Whereas, let's say, motor unit 2 and 3 that I showed you earlier need more stimulus for them to actually fire. So they go firing in order of lower stimulus to medium stimulus to higher stimulus. When you're trying to lift a brick, motor neurons with that higher threshold are going to fire, and they're going to control those fast twitch fibers. Let me show you a little bit more about that. This is a photograph. This has been stained where you have these red slow twitch fibers and these white, and not exactly white, fast twitch fibers. And they're all mixed up like that within your muscle. So you have some that are doing one kind of task and another that are doing a different kind of task, but together they form the entire muscle. You can't really see this, and this one's been stained. People ask me in anatomy, can we see slow twitch and fast twitch fibers? No, you can't see the difference. You'd have to stain them, but this is a good diagram showing how they would be mixed together. Okay. So red slow twitch fibers have different names. The slow twitch fiber is also called oxidative, and it's also called type 1. Okay, many synonyms. Type 1, oxidative, or red slow twitch fiber. If it's red, it's because it contains something called myoglobin that's reddish. And it is this molecule that's really good at captivating oxygen so that you don't run out of oxygen. So that when you're standing up, postural muscles, again, you're standing for long periods of time, your legs aren't just going to give away, you're not going to drop. Because this molecule is going to continually give oxygen and make ATP so that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen. Turns out that diving mammals and fish have high levels of this. They contain a lot of mitochondria because you're going to be making ATP constantly. It's going to allow for lots of oxygen because you have myoglobin, and therefore it's not going to fatigue because you have the ability to make lots of ATP. It also, this type of fiber has lots of capillaries in it. And by having lots of capillaries, it'll bring lots of blood. By bringing lots of blood, it'll bring lots of oxygen. The contraction lasts about 6 to 10 times longer than the fast twitch. Okay, so it's going to, in order to first contract and then relax, it's going to be much longer. So it's about 75 milliseconds, which is still crazy fast, but it is longer than the fast twitch fiber. Think postural muscles. The white fast twitch fiber, also called type 2A or glycolytic, doesn't have myoglobin. It has lots of glycogen, but no myoglobin. It's not going to look red. It's going to look whiter. It has fewer mitochondria. So it's going to have more glycolysis going on and breaking it down, making that ATP. It's going to be a very fast contraction, but this is the kicker. It's going to fatigue, right? It has fewer mitochondria. Contracts, it does a really good job of going fast, but it's going to tire. It's going to tire more quickly. It uses up that ATP way faster. This one is good for sprinting, for strong, fast contractions that are going to happen quickly, that allow you to get somewhere and tire. That's how it works. And the twitches last about 7.5 milliseconds. Okay, let's stop right there.